Hello and welcome to The Take with Sophy Ridge, live at 9 here in the heart of Westminster. Now, polls open for council elections across England in just 10 hours' time. And even if you're watching in Scotland or Wales and you're not voting in these elections, this is why you should care. It's Rishi Sunak's first test at the ballot box as Prime Minister, so we get to find out whether he really has it in him to turn the Tory ship around. And for Keir Starmer, can he turn that huge poll lead into something concrete? In other words, is he on the path to number 10? We'll bring you both the major parties, the latest polling, and a fascinating interview with the SNP as we bring you takes from all sides over the next 60 minutes.
Our memories on that short. We all know what happened last time when they were in power. There was no money left for the country.
They're bringing up that note left by Liam Byrne back in 2010. You can really tell it's the final PMQs before a big set of elections, can't you? And there was more.
Growth down, tax up, the economy crashed. Mr. Speaker, they're going to need a bigger note.
He knew that one was coming, didn't he? You can certainly tell that. There was also a few laughs when the SNP's leader in Westminster asked this question.
In 2010, David Cameron convinced Nick Clegg to drop his pledge on university tuition fees. Yep. Does the Prime Minister intend to take the credit for convincing the leader of the Labour Party to do likewise?
A little bit of an awkward moment. We'll talk about that later, plus the wider state of the Scottish National Party. And we've got some really cracking guests for you on the show tonight, including the Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove. We'll talk to Labour's Shadow Levelling Up Minister, Alex Norris, and the man that you saw just a few moments ago, the SNP's Westminster leader, that's Stephen Flynn, and much more besides on The Take. Hello, good evening. Well, there are plenty of nervous council candidates across England and plenty of nervous politicians here in Westminster and strategists at party HQs as well, all waiting to find out what happens and trying to work out what it means for the looming general election. So let's crack straight on. We can start with the best bits of the week so far.
Thousands of nurses in England have walked out today as part of their dispute with the government over pay.
The latest action comes ahead of a critical meeting between NHS bosses, health unions and ministers where the latest pay offer will be discussed.
And we've just had this breaking news. The NHS Staff Council today has overwhelmingly accepted the government's pay deal.
It's important to note it was a majority decision, not a unanimous decision.
Everyone now respects the decision of the NHS Staff Council. It's an opportunity to now come together.
Now, candidates across England are out and about for a final day of campaigning ahead of tomorrow's local elections.
We've always said these are going to be a tough set of elections for us. We're concentrating on delivering on people's priorities to a local level.
So Keir Starmer will be hoping to get that red line above the blue line, but no other leader of the Labour Party, or indeed the Conservative Party, have been able to turn that into an instant general election wins.
Are you going to see big election losses, Prime Minister?
Not long to go now until Prime Minister's questions.
And this, I guess, is the final act of these two gents as they try and compel, encourage voters to put a cross in their particular party box.
4 years for the average saver to save £9,000. Or to put it a different way, in terms the Prime Minister will understand, roughly the annual bill to heat his swimming pool.
Previously, Mr. Speaker, he did say, he's on record and saying, local people, local communities should have more power, more control. Now he's U-turned. Just another in a long list of broken promises.
Once again, things getting pretty personal there at PMQs. We can start this evening with the government. As we keep saying, it is a crucial test for the Conservatives after months of fairly disastrous polls. A few moments ago, I spoke to the Levelling Up Minister, Michael Gove. We're gearing up to the local elections. What are you expecting to see?
Well, it's difficult, obviously, when you're just on the eve of those elections to state with definitive certainty what's likely to happen. The experts, has been well advertised, Rallings and Thrasher, the sort of gurus of polling, say that they expect the Conservatives to lose about 1,000 seats.
Up to 1,000, the worst case scenario, not that's not the exact prediction.
And it is challenging, all the points about the point in the lifetime of this Parliament and some of the challenges that we had as a government last year, I think make it tough. But we've got some very good candidates. We've got a very good record in local government on everything from maintenance of our roads, the amount of money that we've devoted to potholes, to keeping council taxes low, to making sure that when, for example, big planning decisions are made, that Conservatives make sure that we protect the green belt and safeguard the environment. And, of course, when it comes to recycling as well, Conservative councils have a great record when it comes to waste. So I hope that the good work of Conservative councillors is rewarded at the polls tomorrow.
Potholes and bins. We're in a local election bingo season. It's certainly, we know that those votes are coming up when you guys start talking about those things. I spoke to Keir Starmer, who said that actually the Conservatives should be making gains in these elections. 2019, he says, was the second worst set of results ever. Theresa May apologised and a few weeks later resigned, and that was the end of her. And he has got a bit of a point, hasn't he? I mean, you say that, look, the experts are predicting up to 1,000 seat losses, but they're predicting that because of how badly you guys are doing in the polls.
No, I think, again, Sir Keir will say one thing one day and another thing the next in order to, try to...
Well, he's been quite consistent in saying about your polling record.
I don't think the Labour leader has been saying that Conservatives should be making gains very often. He does it because he tacks with the wind in order to, he's a classic politician.
Sorry. I'm getting very confused by the direction we're going here. I'm asking you about the reason that you are setting to lose seats at the election is because of how badly you're doing at the polls.
Well, and indeed you put it in the context of Keir's spin, and, he'll say it as he always does because of the political advantage of the moment that he's seeking. But the broader point is that we are facing a challenge after what was a very difficult year last year. And the one thing I would not want to see is the good work of Conservative councillors on the ground affected by the backwash of what happened. I also think that there is a recognition that with a new Prime Minister in Rishi Sunak, with the focus that he's put on halving inflation, reducing debt, growing the economy, cutting waiting lists, and, of course, stopping the boats, that people will, I hope, be ready to vote Conservative tomorrow and ready to see us deliver over the course of the next year or 18 months.
It's going to be quite tough in some of the sort of traditional blue wall, shall we say, some of the places like where you represent.
In Surrey, yes.
Do you think it's going to be a difficult night in those kind of shires?
Well, I think that there are challenges everywhere. And I think
specifically then? I
think that we know that there will be some opportunist political parties and movements that will seek to generate or catalyse some of the challenges that we've had in the past in order to try to take control of some local authorities. But ultimately, I think that the record of Conservative councils, the efficiency that they've shown, I hope will be rewarded. More broadly, though, I would say, as the Secretary of State responsible for local government, there are people in all parties who do believe in contributing to their communities. So I wish all the candidates well, but I really hope that people will re-elect Conservatives. And in Surrey, the Conservative council record has been one of, to my mind, superb delivery, including in my own constituency, which is one of the most attractive places in Britain to do business.
I want to talk a bit about housing. You mentioned there the sort of green belt. You've also said previously the housing market is broken.
Yes.
And we desperately need more homes to bring ownership within reach of many more people. Are you going to be taking on the NIMBYs?
Well, I think that it's wrong to characterise people as NIMBYs. I think it's insulting to use a phrase like that. I think the critical thing is we need to go with the grain of what people want. People do want new homes, but they also want new homes which are beautiful. They want the infrastructure alongside them, the investment in schools, hospitals and roads. They want to retain democratic control, and they want homes that are environmentally situated in the right locations. That's why the green belt is so important.
I'm interested to hear you say homes that are beautiful there, which obviously everyone would prefer a beautiful home. But I'm just wondering about, where the line is. You recently blocked Berkeley Homes from building houses in Kent because they're generic suburban. What's so bad about generic suburban? Doesn't the priority need to be getting houses?
No. The most important thing is to make sure that we have homes that are quality dwellings that people can take pride in.
But and also... It can be a quality dwelling, but generic suburban, right?
No. Well, first of all, that is a specific planning application which is now being judicially reviewed. I can't go into the detail, but there's a very good letter in the Times today pointing out that actually the design code, which was adopted by the local community, has to be complied with, and it is important. We all believe in local democracy on the eve of local elections, that local democracy is honoured. But more broadly, if we simply concentrate on the quantity of homes built and don't concentrate on quality, what we risk creating are the slums of the future. You and I both know about some of the recent tragedies that we've had in poor quality rented housing, poor quality social housing, and in poor quality private rented housing. So we need to make sure that homes are high quality, that they contribute to a sense of community, and the pile them high, sell them cheap approach that we saw in the 1960s has now, unfortunately, led to people being in homes which are just not fit for purpose.
You mentioned the rental market there, and one of the biggest barriers to people getting homes is because they can't afford to save up for them, right?
Yes.
So, just looking in London, a third of your wage now, most people's wages are spent on rent. Rental prices up 15% on last year. What are you doing about it?
We're introducing new legislation. It'll be out next week. It's a renters reform bill, and it will change the way in which the relationship between landlords and tenants work, providing tenants with new protection, which should ensure that they're better protected against arbitrary rent increases.
Are you not worried on the building homes front as well, what scrapping targets is going to do?
No, I think that it's a misnomer to say that we're scrapping targets. We still have a commitment to 300,000 new homes every year. And what we've done is we provided incentives for local authorities to set achievable targets, taking account of the importance of protecting the environment. And if local authorities do not set an appropriate number of homes that are built, then they will find that their plans are overruled by the planning inspector. But it's a more sensitive, nuanced, pro-environment, pro-democracy approach.
I want to talk to you a bit about Sue Gray. There's been a lot of focus on Sue Gray, the senior civil servant who left to become Keir Starmer's chief of staff. Now, you worked with her for many years, right? So you know her more than most. Is she a woman of integrity?
Totally.
So do you have any concerns about her appointment?
Yes, I do, and they relate to Keir Starmer's role. The key thing is Keir Starmer could share with the public, with Aqaba, and indeed with the Cabinet Office, details of all of his contacts with Sue and all of his team's contacts with Sue and others. He has chosen not to.
Do you think
his silence condemns him. It's unchivalrous, it's untrustworthy, it's wrong. The responsibility is Starmer's.
At the same time, though, you say she's a woman of integrity.
Yes.
You, therefore, I would imagine, believe that she wouldn't do anything that would be, breaking the rules or against the rules. Our deputy political editor, Sam Coates, saying today that the first contact between Sue Gray and Keir Starmer was in October. I mean, that's after Boris Johnson, that's after Partygate. What's the concern? Surely you do talk to somebody before giving them a job.
Well, the person who can clear this up, as I say, is Keir Starmer. He is the elected figure, the public figure, with the responsibility of having initiated this approach and having taken this decision. He should come clean. His failure to do so suggests to me that he has something to hide. It's up to him.
Now, it's been a pretty difficult time for the civil service, the scrutiny on the Sue Gray appointment. There's been, of course, the focus around the Dominic Raab report as well. The man at the top of the civil service, Simon Case, is in the papers, I think, more than I can remember anyone else in that job. Is that a sustainable position for him?
Yes, I think it's simply the case that the media environment in which we live, and I don't complain, it's just a fact of life, means that there is more focus sometimes on individual characters at particular points, and there will be individual people who will be, in the pitiless spotlight of news scrutiny at certain points.
Because he is in the spotlight, and it's the decisions and the advice that he's given that has come under question, whether it's Sue Gray, whether it's Nadhim Zahawi, whether it's Boris Johnson. Is this sustainable that he's getting this constantly in the press, constantly his decisions being picked over and questioned?
Yeah, I think it is sustainable, and I think it's wrong to concentrate on civil servants in this way. I think that the inevitable focus on whoever was Cabinet Secretary is a consequence of the turbulent political times through which we've been living. So whoever had been Cabinet Secretary would have found themselves, because of a period when you've had 3 Prime Ministers in a relatively quick succession, would have found their role as the Prime Minister's principal policy advisor, among other things, held up to the light. So
he was a victim, I guess, of the chaos in the Conservative Party, is what you're trying to say.
I wouldn't say that. I think that we've been living through very turbulent political times, but I think that the Cabinet Secretary and other permanent secretaries strive to do their best for the elected government of the day. Of course, there's going to be scrutiny of them, but my own view is that we as elected politicians should be grateful to them for the work that they do, and we should appreciate their commitment to public service.
Are you going to be pledging allegiance to the King this weekend?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What's your plans?
Well, I'm very fortunate as a member of the Cabinet, or certainly as a member of the Cabinet at the moment, to be invited to the coronation, and I shall... it's a great honour. It's a moment when our country comes together. It is, on the one hand, a moment of religious and historic significance, but it's also a chance for us to recognise that our history has been a history where we've achieved enormous things and made great progress because there are also symbols of continuity. And so this country, you know, the home of the NHS, the country that defeated the slave trade and defeated fascism, we did all that because our constitutional bedrock was secure. The more secure your home, the further you can venture. And in that sense, our royal family, the monarchy, is a symbol of that security. So I'll be celebrating the institution, as well as also remembering both the service of Her late Majesty the Queen, but also the commitment to so many great causes of the King, not least the environment. Clearly a bit of a royalist, then. Have you got any street parties? Are you getting a quiche out? What's the... later in the day, I'll be with a few friends, and yes, we probably will go mad with the coronation quiche. Michael Gove promising to go mad with the coronation quiche. I really have no words to follow that from him. Interesting interview. We'll get Labour's take a little bit later, but I just wanted to talk to our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates, a little bit about Sue Gray, because Sam's been doing a bit of digging into this story. And I'll be honest, I'm trying to work out how much we should care about this. Sue Gray, long-standing civil servant, of course, headed up the Partygate inquiry into Boris Johnson, Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, or who he hopes to be the Chief of Staff. There's a lot of scrutiny right now, isn't there, about that appointment?
That's right. And back in March, in early March, Sky News revealed that this woman here, Sue Gray, 30-year veteran of the civil service, the woman who did the Partygate inquiry into Boris Johnson, was going to work for that man, Keir Starmer. She's going to be his Chief of Staff when she's finally released by the civil service to go and do so. But there are lots of concerns amongst Conservatives because she knows everybody's secrets. One of the jobs that she's had quite recently was head of propriety and ethics. That means she was the person that ministers had to go to confess their conflicts of interest, their sins. She'd often decide whether a minister stayed or went. For the enemy, and now, exactly, she knows the kinds of things that he wants to know that could give him some kind of electoral advantage, and that's why Tories are very worried about this appointment. Now, there has been a mystery in British politics for the last 2 months. Keir Starmer has refused to say, at the point at which he revealed he was going to employ Sue Gray, how long he'd been talking to her for. Was it, for instance, all the way back to the Partygate inquiry days back in the first half of last year? Well, tonight, I can reveal the answer to this mystery that has come up time and time and again. The first contact between these two people came in October last year. Now, let me just get my dates right on this, OK, because it feels like quite a long time ago because politics has been on fast forward. But that is after Boris Johnson. It's after the Partygate inquiry. Why didn't Keir Starmer and Sue Gray just tell people that? So it's not clear why they didn't come public. The thing that they're waiting for is this body called ACABA. Now, that's the appointments body to determine when Sue Gray can be released to go and work for Keir Starmer. At the moment, she's on gardening leave. She's at home. She's effectively kicking her heels and not doing anything. And she's got to wait for ACABA to do a report into what she did and when she can be released and how much of a conflict of interest. And I think what they're doing is trying to not get in the way of that. But it doesn't look great. It doesn't look good. But at the same time, it was some time after Partygate. Yes, there were some discussions about what government would have to do for the inquiry that's still going on into Boris Johnson. So I suspect some Tories will suggest maybe she broke the civil service code, but far from clear that it's quite as bad as some people thought before. Interesting, certainly. Sam, obviously talking to all the right people in Westminster to try and keep on track of that story. You're watching The Take. We are live in Westminster for you today. Up next, we're going to be talking to the Westminster leader of the SNP. Lots to talk about the SNP with Stephen Flynn.
In the last few months, there's been a dramatic advance in the power of AI in various different ways, most prominently the chatbots. ChatGPT has gone through various different iterations in just in the last few months, and also in a whole range of other capabilities, video, making videos from text, making pictures that look very realistic, like that one of the Pope, you might remember, wearing the puffy jacket.
Coat, yeah.
So that, I mean, that's just a tiny hint of what's to come in terms of the realism of the stuff that AI could produce. We should be most scared about, Geoffrey Hinton brought this up in his interviews, the existential risk of AI. And that's something which sounds like it's almost out of a science fiction film, like Terminator or something, but it is possible, and Geoffrey Hinton is saying this, that AI could actually end up wiping out humanity if we allow it to become too powerful. And that, you know, sounds...
How does that happen?
Well, over time, we develop AI, we develop it into a much more intelligent phenomenon, whatever you want to call it, than us. And we start giving it power in various different ways. We start giving it access to energy, we start giving it access to financial transactions, we start giving it access to weapons. And this might happen from actors that are not necessarily responsible. This might happen by countries using it for war and so on. And if it becomes more intelligent than we do, and if it becomes able to improve itself and able to kind of trick humans and be more intelligent than them, we could end up in a situation like we're in with, I don't know, chimpanzees, where they can't possibly comprehend our intentions, and we allow them to exist because we want to, but we needn't necessarily.
Hello, welcome back live to Westminster. You're watching The Take. Well, we can turn now to the Scottish National Party, and it has been, frankly, 2 months of utter turmoil for the party. And today, the SNP at Westminster confirmed it had finally been able to appoint auditors amid investigations into the party's finances. A little earlier, I spoke to the SNP Westminster leader, Stephen Flynn. Just want to start with your question at PMQs, saying that David Cameron convinced Nick Clegg to drop his pledge on university tuition fees. Does the PM intend to take the credit for convincing the leader of the Labour Party to do likewise? I mean, it sounds a bit like one of those planted questions you get from the government benches.
Very much not the case. What I was seeking to do there was just to highlight the absurdity of Labour's position. You know, Keir Starmer, when he became Labour leader, came in with a number of pledges that he made to the Labour membership and ultimately pledges to the public as well. And he's reneging on many of them, not least the one in relation to free tuition.
It's pretty helpful for the Conservative Party. When you just look at the response from Rishi Sunak, I thank the honourable gentleman for the question. It is hard to keep up with the list of broken promises.
Well, I think in relation to this particular issue, there's a clear dividing line between the Scottish National Party and the Labour Party. Of course, in Scotland, under the Scottish Government, led by by Humza Yousaf, we have free tuition. It's why I'm sat here today, because I was one of the very many beneficiaries of that, as so many other people have been. And now we have a Labour leader who's seeking to elicit change, who wants to get young people to aspire for a better future, who's saying that his pledge, which he made to them, a very important pledge, now no longer matters. He doesn't want to abolish tuition fees and match the priorities of the SNP.
But you can see why you're really going for Keir Starmer here, right? And Rishi Sunak may think it's actually quite helpful. I mean, are you a little bit worried that, SNP supporters looking at the state of your party right now might switch to the Labour Party? I'm old enough to remember when they were the largest party in Scotland.
Well, I think there's been a lot of speculation in relation to that. But the point of my question today was to highlight that it's the SNP who are looking to protect young people's futures, and it's the SNP who deliver free tuition for people in Scotland. And that's not just a slight at the Labour Party, it's a slight at the Conservatives as well, and indeed the Lib Dems. And the whole point of that was to structure the fact that, Westminster is the one that's taken us out of the European Union. You have the three big political parties in Westminster, three established Westminster parties who don't want to go back in, who want to limit the opportunities for young people. And here we have it again when it comes to education, and you have the Tories, the Labour Party and the Lib Dems who don't want to give young people that opportunity that the SNP have given young people. And I think that's a clear dividing line between the Scottish National Party and all those parties, not just the Labour Party, not just the Tories, not just Lib Dems, but all of them.
I guess, if you were a voter or swing voter in particular looking at the SNP right now, though, you might think, look, are these guys really competent enough to manage other people's money when they can't manage their own? I mean, you have been scrambling to meet a deadline, right? To get the auditors in to access this money.
Yeah.
It's not a great look, is it?
So I don't think anyone can or will shy away from the challenges that we've faced internally. Obviously, the party's had its issues north of the border, and down here we've had challenges in relation to meeting the audit deadline. I'm actually delighted that we can now confirm that we have an auditor in place, and we're looking forward to getting that deadline, which is the end of May, hit, because it's important that we have access to that resource in order to pay our staff, and they've been at the forefront of this discussion. And I think some of the politics around it's been a bit uncomfortable in that regard, because it was their jobs, their livelihoods and the support that they provide us that we were seeking to protect.
I mean, what is going on? Like you say, it's we're talking about missing out on 1.2 million, having to let people go.
Well, of course, we're not going to be letting anyone go, and we're going to hit the deadlines. But it was very challenging, and I found out in February about the situation, the fact that we didn't have an auditor. Since then, we've been trying to secure one. We've done that now, but there's been challenges. How
did you only find out in February? I mean, you must have. How did you react when you first found that out?
Well, I think when I first found out, I didn't actually think it was a huge deal, because I thought it would be quite straightforward to go and secure a new auditor. That obviously didn't prove to be the case, but now we've got one. I'm just delighted we're over that, and we can get back to talking about politics.
I guess the issue is, does it feed into wider concerns about the SNP and management of money? Your party is subject to a fraud investigation north of the border. We've seen people being arrested, forensic tents outside houses, motorhomes being seized. I mean, a lot of people will be looking at this. It sounds like something out of a TV drama. Why should they trust the SNP?
I think there's individuals that have obviously been contacted by the police, and it would be remiss of me to delve into that. But look, we need to get our house in order. Humza's done a lot up till now in relation to that. We've got a governance review in place, and I'm looking forward to the outcome of that coming forward, because we need to be in a better place internally as a party, as a member. It's frustrating for me to know and to learn some of these things in the media, and to obviously learn about things after the fact. I don't think that's helpful, and I think across our membership that's how we feel. But look, we've been in government for a long time, and the reason we've been in government for a long time is people of Scotland trust us to deliver for them. And tuition fees is a clear example of where we have done things differently, we've done things better, and we'll continue to do that.
It's interesting you're saying that about how you felt frustrated as a member to be, I guess, kept out of the loop of things. Do you think there's been like a culture of secrecy?
I think what we've seen since Humza's came in is certainly more openness, more transparency, and I think that's a good thing. I've tried to be as upfront as I possibly can on all of these things as well.
So was it open and transparent before then?
I think people can read between the lines and assess the fact that if members of the party, I don't even think the deputy leader of the party was aware of certain aspects of things that had happened. I don't think that's helpful. But we have a new leadership team in place. Humza's really focused on making sure that we resolve these problems. We've got the governance review in place. He's been very open, very forthright with the media on all of their queries in relation to these things. And we need to keep that going, because what matters most in politics is trust, and the public need to trust us. They've placed their trust in us for a long, long time, and we need to make sure that they continue to do so into the future.
Were you wrong to place your trust in Nicola Sturgeon then?
No.
Did she let you down?
No, I mean, I know what you're kind of trying to allude to here in relation to some of the challenges within the party. But, you know, Nicola Sturgeon led us to election victory after election victory. She was supremely talented and supremely successful. Could things have been done differently in terms of the way the party operates? In that retrospect, I think everyone would probably nod their head and say, yeah, it probably should have been done differently. But Humza's doing things differently. That's a good thing. I've been really impressed by him up till now. I think he's certainly going down well with the public back home as well. And hopefully we can go on to positive new days, because, you know what, a lot of people were projecting the demise of the Scottish National Party. That ain't happening. We're just getting started.
You speak very highly, obviously, of your new leader, Humza Yousaf. He has said it's been, in his words, I think I can say this on TV, bloody frustrating. It hasn't been the ideal honeymoon for him.
No, it's not. But look at what he's managed to achieve in those 6 weeks. He's managed to put forward his own prospectus for government and around equality and opportunities. He reset our relationship with business, which was badly needed. He's reset his relationship with businesses in the north east of Scotland, energy businesses, which is very important from my perspective. He's put cost of living at the very forefront of everything that he's doing. He's had a number of policy pledges up till now in relation to providing support for those who are in dire circumstances created by people down here in Westminster who've crashed the entire UK economy, and the Scottish Government's having to try and pick up the pieces where it can. He had an anti-poverty summit today, which shows that he's focused on meeting the challenges that are there for the people of Scotland. And whilst he's been doing all that, he's also been sorting out things within the party. You know, it took us 6 months to get an auditor, or to look for an auditor. In 6 weeks, Humza Yousaf delivered one. You know, that's the manner of what he's achieved now. I'm really excited about what's coming in the future.
I was quite interested to see his comments on free school meals in Scotland. He was saying, look, he's got a child who is, I can't remember the exact age, but in school.
14, I think.
There you go. Is it right for other people to be paying for meals for his children? What's your take on that?
So what he was referring to there was the free school meals that exist in Scotland. So at this moment in time, most of the year groups in primary school are covered, and we're looking to expand that to primary 6 and primary 7, which is a really good thing. As I understand it, I think there's many pilot schemes in relation to secondary schools as well. But we then need to have that discussion about what does that look like in secondary schools. And as part of that, we don't just need to reflect upon how much money families have in their pocket, but also what the habits are of people in secondary school. Because I'm sure you, like me, your habits change somewhat the older you got. But at the heart of this is the fact that the SNP in Scotland, whether it's free tuition, whether it's free school meals, whether it's free prescriptions, whether it's lower council tax, so on and so forth, we've been at the forefront of providing progressive policies, and we'll continue to do that.
It's the coronation this weekend.
It is.
Are you going to be pledging allegiance to the King?
I believe I already have.
And how are you going to be celebrating?
I'll be there. I'll be there on Saturday. Look, I'm not a monarchist. I've been quite open about that in the past. But I represent everyone and all communities in Scotland, so I'll be there on their behalf to make sure that they're represented, because that's the right thing to do. It's the grown-up thing to do. And I'll obviously be there with the First Minister of Scotland as well.
If there's an independent Scotland, do you think King Charles should be the monarch?
I think it's important that the people of Scotland, if they want to change, have the opportunity to change. That applies to everything, not just the monarchy, not just the constitution, but all aspects of things. Nothing should be out of the reach of the Scottish people when it comes to deciding what their constitutional future should be.
So a potential referendum then on the monarchy?
If the people of Scotland so wanted that to be the case. But, you know, what I think is important is to recognise the fact that we do have a head of state, and whilst we've got a head of state, they'll have my respect.
OK, thank you very much. Good to talk.
Thank you.
I thought that was a pretty revealing interview, actually, when he was talking a bit about the culture within the SNP, read between the lines about whether it was open and transparent previously. Now, it's just absolutely typical, isn't it? You do an interview with the SNP Westminster leader, and a few minutes later, a pretty blockbuster poll then comes out about the SNP. So here it is, and it is not pretty reading, I have to say, for Stephen Flynn or for Humza Yousaf. You can have a little look at this poll here. It's a new Westminster voting intention poll in Scotland showing that support for the SNP has fallen to its lowest vote share in any UK general election poll by any pollster since 2014. Now, it actually put the SNP, this is a current voting intention, putting the SNP there down at 35%, with Labour absolutely snapping on their heels, up to 32%, the Conservatives on 18%. And now if you check back, this is the 2019 general election results, that's the SNP fully down 10% from what happened in the 2019 election. Just look at that Labour figure as well. Keir Starmer's going to be pretty happy with this one. And this new poll on Scottish independence also showed that support for independence down, as you can see here, this is the blue line, support for independence, down to just 42%, with no leading by fully 10% on 52% there. So two pretty interesting polls. And of course, there'll be really a read through to what happens at the general election. Keir Starmer and the Labour Party hoping to take advantage of some of the recent turmoil in the SNP. You're watching The Take live in Westminster. Up next, we are going to be taking a closer look at PMQs and also hearing from Labour. Hello, welcome back live to Westminster. This is The Take. Well, we can take a closer look now at this afternoon's PMQs. And couldn't you just tell there's an election happening in a day's time? Because the Labour leader Keir Starmer attacked Rishi Sunak over the cost of living crisis. The PM accused Labour of having a long list of broken promises. They're really hitting those pre-election lines, aren't they? Here's PMQs Unwrapped with Joe Pike.
With local elections in the air, provincial politicking dominated today's session, including Keir Starmer's last-ditch pitch to voters. He tried to tie Rishi Sunak to the fallout from Liz Truss's economic policies and the consequences for homeowners.
Does the Prime Minister know how many mortgage payers are paying higher rates since the Tory party crashed the economy last autumn? The question was how many people are paying more on their mortgages each month. And the answer that the Prime Minister avoided giving is 850,000, counting the cost of the Tories' economic vandalism with every mortgage payment they make.
The Labour leader claimed average first-time buyers would need to raise an extra £9,000 for their deposits.
He reinforces just how out of touch he is. £9,000, ha ha ha, £9,000 would take 4 years. They think it's funny.
You're funny, the heckler shouted.
4 years. 4 years for the average saver to save £9,000. Or to put it a different way, in terms the Prime Minister will understand, roughly the annual bill to heat his swimming pool.
Mr Sunak's strategy was surprisingly similar, pouncing not just on the record of the politician opposite, but that of his predecessors.
We all know what happened last time when they were in power. There was no money left for the country. But let's talk about the record. Let's talk about the Labour record on house building, Mr. Speaker. In London, the former Conservative mayor built 60,000 affordable homes in his first 5 years in office. How many did the current Labour mayor manage? Half of that, Mr. Speaker.
And Keir Starmer responded to the Tory jibe about Liam Byrne's no money left letter with this Jaws-related pun.
Debt doubled since 2010, growth down, tax up, the economy crashed. Mr. Speaker, they're going to need a bigger note. And it's right.
As you can see, that gag received a bit of a mixed response in the chamber. Rishi Sunak tried to slip in a jibe about Labour ditching its pledge to scrap tuition fees in England, but where the PM struggled on that topic, the SNP's Westminster leader succeeded.
In 2010, David Cameron convinced Nick Clegg to drop his pledge on university tuition fees. Does the Prime Minister intend to take the credit for convincing the leader of the Labour Party to do likewise?
I thank the honourable gentleman for the question. I'd say it's hard to keep up, Mr. Speaker, with a list of broken promises.
And when Stephen Flynn said this was the party's Nick Clegg moment, just look at the body language on the Labour front bench. Elsewhere, the Speaker knocked over his own glass of water with his robe. Watch the reactions in this replay. And we had an almost endless stream of backbenchers asking about local councils.
The Conservative-led Solihull Council, Lib Dem-controlled Three Rivers District Council, local Conservatives.
Tomorrow's local elections are important, not just because it'll decide who's in charge of things like bin collections, adult social care and children's services, but also it's a great barometer as to the political weather nationwide. We may get a sign over who's likely to be crowned the next PM, but if we're honest, it may all be overshadowed by a different coronation.
Jay Pike's analysis there. As someone who's pretty clumsy, I have so much sympathy for the Speaker knocking over his glass of water there. Now, on our Sunday programme, the Labour leader Keir Starmer was fairly coy about just how much progress he expects to make in tomorrow's local elections, although he said that the government should be making gains. So let's see if we can find out any more. A little earlier, I spoke to the party's Shadow Levelling Up Minister, Alex Norris. Well, at PMQs today, Keir Starmer got a bit of a battering for rowing back on his pledge to scrap tuition fees. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that was the PMQs I watched. There were some very robust exchanges, particularly on house building, that I think clearly the Prime Minister seems to be on exceptionally shaky ground on. You know, Keir's made his case, as he has recently with his 5 missions, and, you know, I think we're on very comfortable territory in terms of the respective visions being set out for the country.
I just want to go through what Keir Starmer said when he was running to be Labour leader. This is to Andrew Neil. He said, we remain committed to scrapping tuition fees. They're all pledges, so the answer to that question is yes. And then he was asked, so university tuition fees being scrapped will be in a Starmer manifesto? And he said yes.
You know, as you know, Sophie, that took place in the spring 2019. Since then, we've had, 2 years of a global pandemic. We've had war on the continent of Europe. We've had the Tories crash the economy, so the equation is slightly different. Keir is committed, as you've seen through our missions, to remove the barriers to opportunity, and funding and education is one of them. We're very, very clear that the system is unfair and needs to be changed. But we will make, and as you know, we're making those preparations ahead of a general election. We will make a very strong offer about making a much fairer system than we have at the moment, and one that crucially balances that need with the nation's finances. I think that's what the public would expect a responsible Labour Party to do, and that's what Keir Starmer's offering.
Look, I accept that it was made a few years ago and the world's changed since then, as you say. But I guess the problem is the world could change again, right? How do we know that what you guys are saying now is going to actually happen if Labour get elected? There's a trust issue.
What you'll get from us is a fully costed, well set out manifesto when the election, is on its way. So, of course, there can be changes even within an election campaign, but in that moment, they'll have a very clear sense of what we want to do for this country. I think that's the responsible way to do it. We know that people want to see from Labour not a laundry list of all the things that we want to do for the country. Of course, there are lots of things. We tried that election in 2019 and the public were very clear about how they felt about that. Instead, what we'll have is a clear, fully costed, affordable, impactful and progressive manifesto that will change Britain for the better, ending the sticking plaster politics we've seen of recent years, but real change in the country through proper mission and driven based ways, cutting crime, improving public services and creating better opportunities. That's what the public will get from us, and they'll be able to make that judgment based on that.
Right, let's talk about the local elections, shall we? Because things are really hotting up in that race. And Keir Starmer told me on Sunday that the Conservatives should be making gains in these sets of local elections. Now, I've heard of expectation management. But that's not really realistic, is it?
I mean, how could it be anything else, Sophie? Let's read back to when the equivalent elections were last fought, which was May 2019. After that, results were so bad for the Conservative Party that shortly after Theresa May resigned. We can't honestly be saying that Rishi Sunak's not going to do better and indeed might even do worse, as the Tories are saying, than that. Well, what would that say about this, the Sunak surge we've been hearing about? So, if Rishi really is the answer, and despite being, second choice of Tory MPs, second choice of Tory members, if he really is the right man to lead this country, well, surely he'll be making significant progress on where Theresa May finished.
Sunak surge, I'm not sure if I've heard that one before. Also, the whole thing is, though, that the projections that we're looking at are because the Conservatives are in a position where they should lose seats, because you just have to look at the polls and Labour clawing their way back from one of your worst ever election defeats. I mean, that's where we are, not to mention the fact that they're also defending the most number of councils and council seats as well. Let's get real, they're not going to be making gains.
Well, as I say, if they're not making gains, what does that say about where they are? It says that where Theresa May finished, which is, considered, I certainly think Boris Johnson and his supporters would say, a real nadir for the Conservative Party. If they're doing worse than that, I think has real questions about where they are. I mean, obviously, we're, of course, focusing on our campaign. We fought a really positive one around the cost of living, around improving public services. So we're hoping that our candidates are going to do really well.
What would be a good night for Labour then? What are you hoping for?
Well, I mean, we are really optimistic. We're looking to gain seats. I think the thing for me is particularly the where rather than the what. If we're going to read this with an eye on the next general election, which of course naturally we're all going to be doing that, then we will be looking at the places that we need to do well in order to win power and win the next general election. So we'll be looking to see if we've gained seats in places like that. I look out the window and about 30 metres away is the Red Wall. So of course we'll be looking at places like Broxtowe, Gedling and beyond, and Nottinghamshire and into Derbyshire. So we'll be looking at those and hoping we're showing that we're making the impact there that we want to be doing.
I mean, that's the point, isn't it? If you are going to be using these local elections to map over across to the general election, you need to be doing more than picking up a few seats. If you're going to seriously show that you're a government in waiting, you need to be picking up hundreds of seats.
Well, as I say, I think the top line number can be a fool. So, take Nottingham, for example. We currently have 50 out of 55 councillors. I very much hope on Friday we get up to 55. We fought for all of those seats. And if that happens, well, we'll have gained 5 and the Tories will have lost 2. So a change of 7 seats, well, that sounds like quite a lot. I don't think it would tell us any more about the general election. We already hold 3 parliamentary seats in this city. So, as I say, I don't think it's that global number. I think it's the where. And I think we'll soon be able to look at those areas and to make that judgment as to whether we're making the progress we want to be making.
Just finally, I've done a bit of door knocking in my time, going alongside Labour and Conservative and Lib Dems, I should say, rather than campaigning actually for a political party. And I have to say, you do see some quite strange things on the campaign trail. I've seen quite a few naked people for a start. What's the weirdest thing you've seen on the campaign trail?
Yeah, I'm going to leave aside all nudity ones because, though I think they were common for most canvassers, mine's a parrot. There's a picture doing the rounds of me in 2017 of me having a very detailed discussion with the parrot. I didn't get the parrot's support. I think I got the owners on that day. But yeah, I think that's the most memorable one I've had.
That is a good one, definitely. Thanks very much for being on the programme today. Thank you. I love a little bit of local election campaigning. Genuinely, the stuff that you see out and about, knocking on doors, is really something else. You're watching The Take. We are going to be looking at what tomorrow's local elections could mean for a general election. That's coming up next.
The press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
There's a feeling amongst some commentators that it's not the most respectful timing.
I think there's a word for it, fake news.
I mean, it's wow from Harriet. Delving deeper into the stories with different perspectives on tomorrow's headlines.
We really haven't seen the government getting round the table and negotiating. There are no easy answers to those questions.
The press preview delivering you tomorrow's news tonight on Sky News.
Hi, welcome back live to Westminster. You're watching The Take, and it feels like we've had lots of takes this evening. We've heard the expectation management game from Labour, from the Conservatives. We can get a bit more towards the truth, shall we, with Sam Coates, because all parties try to spin their lines, of course. Sam, how do you think the atmosphere is, should we say, as we gear up to the big vote?
Well, I've just come from an event with Rishi Sunak, and he's been playing down the Conservative chances and saying that it's going to be a difficult night tomorrow night. But really, all the nerves in Westminster feel that they're much more on the Labour side. They're the party with the most to prove, with the most to lose, because Keir Starmer knows that if he's got any chance of going back into power, taking the Labour Party into government, he's got an enormous mountain to climb.
That's it, isn't it? Because it does feel like we talk a lot about Labour's poll lead, but actually if you look at the comparison to the last election, they have got a huge swing that they need to make, right? If they're going to get any chance. Oh, here we go. As if right on cue. This is your swingometer. Just talk us through what's going on here.
Because remember, Sophie, they need to get 124 seats, the Labour Party, to get an overall majority of 2. Now, if the result at the next general election is exactly the same as the last general election, then the line would go down here. And really, we are expecting Labour to do better than they did last time round. Now, you can see here that it's not that hard for Keir Starmer to basically take the Tories' overall majority, kick the Tories out of Downing Street, and that would only take a 3% swing. But it gets really hard after that. 7% swing, which would be the second highest in this, since the Second World War, really, would take Labour to being the largest party. They need a 12% swing for it to be to have an overall majority. Now, that is bigger than Tony Blair got in 1997 in order to get that 179 majority, and that would only give them a majority of 2 seats. So you see the kind of swing here that they are expected to get. That's why comparisons with 1995 are in play. That's why they're going to have a very difficult job to spin on Thursday night.
That's really interesting, isn't it, to say that even if they're going to get the slimmest of majorities, they need a Tony Blair-style swing, or if you say, really interesting. I just want to know where you're kind of particularly looking out for, because look, we're going to look at what happens on Thursday and extrapolate to the election, right? So are there any particular areas that you're looking at?
Swindon, Derby and Portsmouth.
There we go. Really interesting. So, perfect. We're going to look out for those on Thursday and Friday. Sam's going to be up all night, overnight. I'm going to be taking over from Friday alongside Beth Rigby. So, plenty to tune in for. We'll be back next week and every week, Wednesdays, 9 p.m.